Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Midtown Scholar Bookstore. My name is Alex. I'm with the Scholar. Thank you for joining us this evening. We're happy you're here. We hope you feel safe, and we hope you enjoy tonight's program. Before we begin, I have a few housekeeping notes. One, while our authors will take their masks off for this evening for the conversation, we please ask that you continue to keep your masks on throughout the program, including the audience Q&A and book signing. Two, this event is being live streamed on Zoom. So for those tuning in, please feel free to ask questions at any point via the Q&A box, and we'll try to get to as many questions as we can after the conversation. Three, we are now starting to announce many more events in April, May, June, and beyond. So please stay tuned to our website, social media pages, and e-newsletter to stay on top of the latest events. We're really excited that in-person events are back, so we'd love to see you there or virtually in the coming months. Lastly, please consider supporting the bookstore and our author this evening by purchasing a copy of the book through the Midtown Scholar Bookstore. Every purchase helps support the author, the bookstore, and our ability to run these events as free and open to the public. We will have a book signing afterwards, so whether you're tuning in virtually or here in person, we hope you come away with the book. But now it's my honor to introduce our authors this evening. Our interviewer this evening is none other than Christopher McDougall. Chris covered wars in Rwanda and Angola as a foreign correspondent for the Associated Press before writing his best-selling book, Born to Run. His fascination with the limits of human potential led him to create the Outside Magazine web series, Art of the Hero. And in addition to Born to Run, McDougall is the author of Natural Born Heroes, Running with Sherman, and the forthcoming Born to Run 2, The Ultimate Training Guide. Our featured author this evening is, of course, Kathryn Schultz. Kathryn is a staff writer at The New Yorker and the author of Being Wrong. She won a National Magazine Award and a Pulitzer Prize for the really big one, her article about seismic risk in the Pacific Northwest. Her work has also appeared in the Best American Science and Nature Writing, the Best American Travel Writing, and the Best American Food Writing. A native of Ohio, she lives with her family on the eastern shore of Maryland. Of course, the book we are here for this evening is titled Lost and Found. I've got to read just one blurb. This one's from Gia Tolentino. She writes, quote, Kathryn Schultz has a singular way of turning a familiar idea around and around until it becomes cosmic, geological, wondrous. In Lost and Found, she turns a memoir of love and death into an exploration of the way chance becomes fate and grief intertwines with gratitude. To read her is to be quietly amazed at the hidden depths and histories, as if you were to discover a map of a continent written in the palm of your hand, end quote. It's an honor to welcome Chris and Kathryn back into the bookstore this evening. So without further ado, please join me in giving them a warm Harrisburg welcome.
Before we begin, you guys mind if I do a video? It's my daughter's 18th birthday tomorrow. And right now, as we speak, there's our surprise party for her. We just like all wish her happy birthday. Right on. Her name is Sophie. I'll do like a happy birthday. Kevin, I want you to like bring the roof down, buddy. I can do it. Sophie, like a happy birthday, Sophie. On 3, 2, hang on. 3, 2, 1.
Happy birthday, Sophie! Woo!
Happy birthday, sweetie. It kind of spirals upside down. But we're good. Cool. I'll wait till I'm sure that she actually has a surprise. So, can you have the mics? You guys can hear me, yeah? Okay, can you have the mics? Right on. Okay, cool. Then I asked, how's this? Okay. Cool. I'm really excited to be here. This is the first thing I've done in like 2 years. I've not seen this many faces since February of whatever the hell that year was. And I'm really excited to be back with Kathryn because I almost feel like you were one of like the last people we saw or something. Yeah. And so it's so exciting that in that dead time, we're seeing like nothing was going on. Kathryn is busy making this like amazing book and having a baby, and this gorgeous life is like continuing. And I get to sort of reunite with it afterwards. You know, you emerge from the cave and this is what's happening. I'm also so excited to be back here in Midtown Scholar, a place that I would bleed for. And I hope you guys all appreciate it and love it as much as I do. You know, yeah. In my mind, Alex is Dr. Yes. If you ask Alex to do anything, the answer is always yes. It's always better than you expect. He puts more blood, sweat, and tears in it than you expect. And the events are always like this. You know, he got me to come out of hibernation. He brought Kathryn up here from the eastern shores of Maryland for this event. So it's because of Midtown Scholar that we're here today. So thank you guys for that. And thank you guys for supporting it. So Kathryn is an author of such accomplishment and stature and is respected by so many people who are so much better than I am that I feel severely outgunned.
Can you cut his mic off?
I feel severely outgunned here tonight. So I think what I want to do is lead off with just fast and furious questions. And in the tumult, people won't realize that I'm outclassed here. So the very fact that I have to read the first question because I cannot remember the name of that word. Wait, I completely forgot what we're going to do. We're going to do the
We'll do it midway through. That's
okay,
cool.
midway through. Thank you. All right. So Kathryn, so I thought I'll do the lightning round that you usually do at the end. I'm going to do it right from the start. All right. Number one, quick. What is thigmotactic?
Thigmotactic is the property of desiring to be touched. Wait, can I interrupt the lightning round? Can I break the rule right away? I just have got to echo the thanks to Midtown Scholar, an amazing bookstore. The first bookstore event I have done for this book or in 2 years for anything at all. It's delightful to be back. It's true. Thank you, Alex, and everyone here. Thank you guys for coming out. I know it's still scary to gather in community, but it's also so beautiful and precious, and it's wonderful to be here with you. And thanks also to everyone watching online. And I will just add my very quick moralizing note, which is the world online does not set up a bunch of chairs and keep their doors open and welcome authors and plan events. Whether you are here in person or online, you don't need to buy my book tonight, but please buy something from Midtown Scholar to help them keep doing this. It really means the world, and it sustains us as writers and you as readers and the whole community. So now I'm done and we can do lightning questions.
Thigmotactic.
Oh, sorry. It's the quality of loving to be touched, like a cat I have who always wants to be on your shoulder or in your lap or on top of your keyboard when you're trying to write.
Question 2. Do you agree that is the worst possible word for that thing it describes?
Now that you mention it, yes.
Yes. Okay. I mean, thigmotactic, you want to be attached, you want to be affectionate and loved, and they give it a name like thigmotactic.
Cuddly is also an option.
There you go. Number 2. When are you more likely to see a bear? Hiking or backpacking?
Now I'm being made fun of. Chris is referring to a scene in the book in which I describe really the most memorable fight my partner and I ever had. It took place in Shenandoah National Park when we had, in fact, just seen a bear. This is not very lightning. I think I was on the wrong end of this argument. You're probably more likely to see it on a day hike.
You don't have to answer at lightning speed.
Oh, sorry.
The questions are lightning. The answers can be more like
Leisurely.
a rolling thunder.
Okay. It's true. No one should encourage my quality to speak quickly. It's really not a good habit. Yes, we did, in fact, have a fight about whether you're more likely to see a bear while you're out backpacking or out hiking. Obviously, the fight was not actually about that, because fights are very often not about the thing they purport to be about. For those of you who haven't read it, the second section of my book, Lost and Found, is about falling in love. And it felt important, partly because I feel very fortunate. I met someone amazing. I fell head over heels. We have an incredible marriage, and it was delightful to dwell in the love story. But I felt that it didn't feel right to dwell in a love story and not acknowledge that even the happiest relationship has friction and difference, and also kind of inexplicable rough moments, like when you're in a beautiful national forest and find yourself arguing about bears. So there's a long section about fights about bears. On balance, I think I was probably wrong.
I love that I could be here tonight and sort of facilitate that reconciliation of the bear debates. You know, I feel like we made a lot of progress here tonight. Okay. On average, how many items do all of us misplace every day?
Oof, can I consult my own book? I have a terrible memory for facts. 12? Is that what I say?
9.
9. Well, in my head, I was like, 6 is too few. 12 sounds like a lot. So it's right in the middle. 9. Yeah, I found that really shocking when I first read it. But you know, there's all these like insurance companies and various other entities that like to track random data about us. And one of the things they track is how many things do we lose? Obviously, the the main reason I was thinking about loss was thinking about these major losses, like, you know, loss of loved ones. But it was very interesting to me to put that in the context of all the other things we lose. And so then I started thinking, well, what do we know about all the other things we lose? Turns out there's some decent data. And I thought, how is it possible you lose 12 things a day? Like, that just seems insane. And then I actually thought about the texture of a day, and it's like, honey, have you seen my car keys? You know, where you're like taking notes in a book and then you can't find the pen and you like start scrounging in the cushions, and you get out to the car to go to dinner, but you realize you've left your coat inside, and you go inside and you can't find your coat. And maybe, I guess so. I guess we lose a lot of things. So apparently that's the average. And I just want to remind you, averages are average. So pity the poor soul who loses 24 things a day.
That's right. Okay, my final lightning round question is, which version of love at first sight do you believe in, Plato's or Dante's?
Well, let me explain that to the audience. So Dante, for those of you who have read your classics, Dante fell in love at first sight with a young woman named Beatrice, who tragically died after they had approximately like 46 seconds total of interaction in their whole lives. But he nonetheless worshipped her and believed her to be kind of the ideal human, and kind of dedicated his life and certainly much of his writings to her. And has this beautiful and strange passage where he describes seeing her and falling for her in that moment. He was like 10 and a half years old or something, little kid when he first saw her. And it's a very strange passage because it's really modern. Like basically what he says is like, you know, the sort of functions of his brain and spirit and body had this whole series of reactions, and only very belatedly kind of reported it to his conscious mind of like, like she's the one. So he certainly believed in love at first sight, and he believed it was material. It was like something that happened in the body, or the body and the soul. Plato thought that we fell in love at first sight. He also believed in love at first sight, but he thought that it wasn't exactly that we saw the person and somehow knew. He believed we remembered the person, because Plato in general had this theory that the soul is eternal and it has already learned everything there is to be learned. So what happens when you fall in love at first sight is you're actually just recognizing someone you knew in some former way. Your soul had had contact with this person before and recognized them as your fundamental and correct person. I certainly find Plato's more beautiful and in some ways more persuasive, only in that love at first sight's really weird, right? So I actually did fall in love pretty much at first sight. I mean, I knew incredibly quickly when I met my partner that she was the one, and she knew that about me too. And you know, even more interestingly, I certainly don't think love at first sight is genetic, so don't take this the wrong way. But you know, my mother asked my father to marry her on their second date. My partner's father, when he met his future wife, he met her in the grocery store where he worked, and he asked around until he found someone who knew her and was willing to fork over her phone number. And he said, if you give me your phone number, you can be the best man at my wedding. So both of us actually come from a lineage of people who fell in love at first sight. And it's true that a weird thing about it is it's really hard to understand how you would possibly have enough information about someone instantly, or even if it's not instant, but like day one, right? Let's say you have a conversation, or let's say you have lunch, as my partner, my future partner and I did. How would you possibly know enough to feel like, well, this is the person, you know? And Plato's answer is persuasive because we actually do know that like memory is really powerful, right? Like you only have to have a sliver of like a smell or a you know, a sensory memory. Or I was just home visiting my mom, and I have this little baby, as you just heard, and she pulled out a toy from my childhood, this little wind-up clock that I probably haven't seen in like 3.5 decades. And immediately my whole childhood basement came back to me, because that's where I used to play. So we know that memory can evoke something that strong. So, you know, on balance, I think neither of them are probably right. I think in a good way, love at first sight remains a great mystery, but it certainly, it feels more plausible that a memory would flood us with certainty than kind of you meet a stranger and somehow you know.
A memory Of a past life, you're saying?
Yeah, which to be clear, I do not believe in past lives. So
Yeah.
that's why I said I don't find either of them plausible, but I find Plato's more beautiful.
So here's the problem I have with the whole concept of love at first sight is that I know you, I know your wife. I kind of feel like,
Oh, come on, didn't you fall in love with her when you first met her?
kind of, right? And you too, to be honest. I mean, either one of you is a catch for anybody. So, I mean, it's wonderful that you two are together, but I also kind of feel like in the wild, there's no end of possible loves at first sights for the both of you.
Well, but the beautiful thing is we're not a catch for anyone, right? I mean, the wonderful thing about, what do they say? Like a lid for each pot. Like actually no one's a catch for everyone. And there is, I don't want to suggest there's one right person. That would actually be sort of a tragic view in some ways. But there is something special and specific that happens between two people. I don't know, raise your hand if you fell in love at first sight ever. Okay.
That's a lot. That's like a third of the
Yeah,
population
yeah.
here.
People
Your-
should
your-
sit in
your
the
hand-
middle of the room. This is like
your
the lucky
hand came
part.
up fast. Can you?
What? No, no. Well, I was just answering the question.
Oh.
I saw my husband and I thought to myself, I thought I'd never had before. I thought I'd go anywhere with that man.
Wow.
And so we have. It was our first date. It was, I mean, I just saw him from a distance, like he was opening the car door for me. Oh, 33 or 34 years ago. Yeah. Late 80s. Late 80s. Yeah. So we're still married. Yeah.
That is totally beautiful. And to be honest, it's such a, it's why I wrote the found section of the book, right? Because that kind of finding, like just this like absolutely unexpected thing that appears in your life one day and changes it permanently and beautifully, like what a strange and mysterious and wonderful thing. Like discovery is incredible, especially discovery of other people.
So here's the thing about Kathryn's book is that it's called Lost and Found. And it actually examines all three of those words as independent units, even the and part. But at the same time, I kept feeling like they were way more braided than you might think because, well, first of all, before I get to that, I got to ask the question of like, where do you get the stone cold brass ones to do this? You must have had problems in the past. I feel like no matter what anybody writes, somebody's pissed off. If you misdescribe someone's shoes in a New Yorker story, they're going to be pissed, right? So first, A, have you run into this in the past where you've described people in what you thought was a very fair and representative way and they've been pissed? And then B, why did you think you could wade into your own intimate family circle and take that risk?
Interesting. Yes, I mean, obviously, right. The price of the ticket as a journalist is people are going to be mad at you, and you can't not care because we're human and humane, but you can't care too much because it's not our job necessarily to please our sources or to reflect the world and the world as they believe it to be in the stories they're telling us. We would be doing a grave disservice to readers if that's how we operated. I couldn't have been less worried about writing this book, which I don't think is any reflection of my bravery. It's a reflection of the kind of story I was telling. I remember when I first, so the way nonfiction works when you want to write a book is you write a proposal and then you go like shop it around to a bunch of editors until someone wants to buy it. And I remember vividly sitting in a meeting with one of those editors, and there's kind of a handful of other people in the room. And at the end of the meeting, it all went well. And at the end of the meeting, the editor was kind of asking these odd questions about like my family and my partner's family. And I couldn't even figure out what he was talking about. And then it finally dawned on me that what he was basically trying to ask in so many words was, are we going to get sued? And I laughed when I figured it out because I understand why any reasonable editor would ask that. There's a lot of memoirs out there that delve into very, very difficult families and difficult situations. And it is reasonable to imagine that publication might be followed by litigation. But you know, this memoir really doesn't operate that way, chiefly because it's a memoir about happiness. It's a book about happiness in many ways. I mean, obviously this is a book in part about the death of my father. So it's not that it's, a happy tale beginning to end, but it is deeply about happy families, right? And it's deeply about love, which are not, I think, in some ways the common fodder of contemporary memoir. But it certainly meant that, no, I wasn't particularly afraid of the reactions of anyone while writing this, neither from my family nor from my partner or her family. I feel grateful every day. They were all unbelievably supportive, even though I don't think any of them imagined that like writing a memoir lay in my future, but lo and behold.
Yeah, I just thought it was very brave and risky to risk the feelings of people that are, you more than most people are very, very close with the people around you. There doesn't seem to be any kind of bad blood or feuds or, so would you actually read that description of your dad just to give people a sense of who we're talking about?
Oh, yes, I would be delighted to. This is kind of, no, I'm okay. This is kind of when we're first, we know my father's dead, but we're first sort of meeting him as a living person. My father had something urgent to say about almost everything. The world was endlessly interesting to him, and he delighted in discussing any part of it. The novels of Edith Wharton, the nature of cosmic background radiation, the infield fly rule in baseball, the lingering impact of the 1947 Taft-Hartley Act, the discovery of a new species of nocturnal monkey in South America, the merits of apple cobblers versus apple crisps. My older sister and I were welcomed into these conversations from more or less the time we could talk, but additional participants were never hard for him to find. When it came to other people, my father possessed the gravitational pull of a mid-sized planet. He had a booming voice, a heavy accent, a formidable mind, a rabbinical beard, a Santa Claus belly, and the gestural range of the Vitruvian man. Collectively, the effect was part Socrates, part Tevye.
So that's like the best description of a male that I've ever heard. It's everything. It's mind, body, and spirit. It's past and present. It's him as a person, him as a brain. And I was thinking, that's what this book really is. This is a amazing, almost forensic analysis of why certain people you loved are worth loving.
It's
Your
beautifully
dad
put.
and can we refer to C
Yeah.
by name?
No, but by all means, yeah.
And can we describe a little bit more about who she is?
Yeah, sure. Me right now.
So Kathryn's father is Isaac. And then as Isaac is approaching the end of his life and this bigger than life, this titanic personality is fading from Kathryn's life. At the same time, she finds in some ways his like spiritual kin, but kind of astral opposite, because everything you'd use to describe your father, you would not use to describe
That's
her at
true.
all. Okay. So
Well, the formidable mind.
for sure. Yeah. Yeah. So maybe you can describe who these people are.
Sure. I mean, first of all, Chris, that's so beautifully put. I think that's right. I think part of what I wanted to do with this book was I wanted to look at love and think seriously about love and about happiness, because I think they're both a little underwritten about. It's amazing. You can search for a really long time for a contemporary happy love story that just like dwells in happiness, especially in nonfiction, and not really find one. But it was also incredibly interesting to me, this project of putting these two people I love on the page and thinking about why I loved them and who they are and how they work in the world. I mean, I find people in general fascinating and a really fun task as a writer of nonfiction. I'm hopeless at making people up, but it's a fun task as a writer to try to bring someone you've met to someone who've never met them in a way that they will walk away with the sense that they had or they wish they could. So yes, that's definitely some of what was going on in this book. You heard a tiny bit about my father. It's true. On the one hand, my father and my partner seem strikingly different. I mean, for one thing, age, gender, these kind of obvious things. My dad was a refugee, came to this country when he was 12 or 13. My partner is about as American as you get. She's from she grew up on a farm in a very small rural community on the eastern shore of Maryland, a devout Lutheran. My father, like me, was a extremely secular and skeptical-minded Jew. So in many ways very different, but I said, yeah, what they have in common is the formidable intellect. And as it turned out, some other things as well. I think it's not uncommon when you have a loving parent, or even when you don't, to replicate some of that in your own relationship. But yes, I mean, my partner, we were talking about love at first sight. What did I see when I met her? You know, I was standing on literal Main Street in the little Hudson Valley town where we met, and waiting outside of the cafe where we were going to have lunch. And I looked up, and there was this slender, tall, long-haired, very inexplicably kind of serious looking person walking toward me. We were having lunch, and she was in the middle of a road trip, and she was wearing like a blue blazer and a button-down shirt. And I thought, who goes on a road trip in a blazer and a button-down shirt?
And she was going skiing.
So, no, she wasn't going skiing. That's what you would have been doing, but she was going to Vermont.
Okay.
Also a place where people like, why would you wear your button-down and your blazer to Vermont? But it's very kind of serious, formal person. And we sit down to lunch, and in fact, she was incredibly serious minded. I mean, it was one of these conversations where within 7 seconds, there was no more small talk, and it was deep and interesting from the get go. And actually, it turns out that under the very serious seeming demeanor, she had the kind of laugh that basically made me want to spend the rest of my life making her laugh, which I hope I occasionally manage to do. Adequate, Chris? You can say more. You know her. Sure.
Well, you know, if you know Casey Sepp, she's also the author of this amazing book called Furious Hours. So if you want to really do yourself a favor and support Midtown Scholar, get a copy of Furious Hours. And if you want to see what A Formidable Mind's all about, like just unpack that book. But yeah, when you described that scene of her in the blazer and the shirt, I don't know Casey that well, but I thought that's exactly who she is. It's like the perfect image. I got to circle back though. To me, it is extremely fraught to try to describe the people you love in print. Were you ever at a loss? Did you hit roadblocks? Was it difficult?
I mean, writing in general is difficult, right? You know, so yes, I certainly hit roadblocks, but I would say that those were more, the roadblocks were more structural, or, you know, questions of like, how do I make this compelling for readers, or how much do I need to put in? How much should I leave out? It did not feel that difficult to put people on the page. I mean, it felt interesting in the best possible sense, meaning it like accessed this different, I haven't written in the first person that much, and it was interesting to operate in that mode and try to access that part of my mind. And so it was fun. To be honest, it's easier than a lot of the kinds of writing I do. I mean, it's easier than it's easier than taking 6 months and 27 single-spaced pages of notes and trying to like turn it into a compelling nonfiction narrative. You know, it's certainly easier to sit and think like, well, what was that day like when I met Casey? You know, or how did I feel sitting next to my father in the hospital? Like those just felt like pure acts of thought, you know, and thinking is fun for the most part.
Yeah, I think we just come from different backgrounds. I come from a Sicilian family where we have feuds that have lasted literally for 50 years over something that somebody thinks that somebody else said. So I would not walk into that alligator pit. No.
I mean, you had me at Sicilian families.
Yeah. So here's the thing. As I was reading your book, I think the most remarkable thing about it for me was that every page I'm like, oh, I get it. Like I never thought of this before. It is so packed with these other sides of the coins, you know, these other sides of the moons. Like I'm used to looking at this side, never looked at that side. And to me, the biggest takeaway of all was like, oh yeah, lost and found. That's it. That's like the sum of existence. We lose stuff, we find stuff. We're taken apart, we're brought back together. And that's it. You're born, you're out of the body, you look for another body. Like, that's the entire like life cycle right there. It's between losing and finding things. So for you, as you were writing it, did you have any of those aha moments, like in the very act of researching it or contemplating it? Were you like discovering things you never thought of before?
Oh, for sure. I mean, to me, that's what a lot of writing is trying to figure out what I think. And trying to understand why I'm writing what I'm writing, which by the way is a very inefficient way to write, and I don't recommend it. So my partner, Casey, Chris just mentioned her fantastic book, Furious Hours, about Harper Lee and a true crime case, which actually had an incredible event here. Some of you might have even been here. Alex was kind enough to host that too, but now I lost my train of thought. What was I starting to say? Oh, writing to find things. My partner is a smarter and more organized writer than I am, and she figures out what she wants to say before she sits down to write. Let me tell you, that is a vastly more efficient method. I sit down to write, and like 15 drafts later, I'm like, that's the point. And then I have to go back to the beginning and like realign all the like magnetic filings so they serve the idea that I finally figured I'm trying to say. Highly inefficient, but interesting, because you do learn. You do learn as you go. And by the way, I was not scared to write about the people I love in life, but I did have at least one moment writing this book when I was like, yeah, you're right, Chris. I was like kind of writing about the whole shebang, determined to do it in like under 300 pages. And that gave me pause.
Yeah, but how about those like connections, those little flashes of like insight and things that you hadn't thought about before, understandings about like love and death and loss.
What it was like, or examples of those moments.
Or you can shake your head and say, no, dude, that's all you. That's not me at all.
No, I mean, look, I think the book probably wouldn't work if those moments didn't exist. I started out with this broad sense of, well, I'm interested in the category of loss. It's a really weird category, right? It somehow does contain everything from our car keys to elections to faith, to the people we love. And that's weird. And like, what's up with that, right? Like, is that just linguistic chance? Is it actually meaningful that we refer to all these things in the same way, which ultimately I think it really is. Same thing with finding, right? I thought, well, discovery is really interesting. Why is it so fun, right? Like, why, when we take our children on road trips, do we entertain them by having them find license plates from all 50 states? There's like absolutely no intrinsic reward to doing that, right? And yet somehow it will keep a kid like relatively quiet for 7 hours on a car trip. And yet finding also includes all of these very deep discoveries from, planets and like, world altering ideas to finding the people that we love. So I was interested in those categories. I was interested in this weird third category we probably mercifully haven't talked about very much, the third part of the book, and which came about because I did fall in love and lose my father in quite quick proximity, and therefore thought a lot about how actually these categories there's not a neat wall between them. We don't love and find things for a while and then grieve and lose things for a while. We're always doing all these things and many other things at once. So I knew I was interested in the broad categories, but broad categories don't make a book, right? The specifics do, and really thinking about like, well, what is finding, right? And like, how do we look for things and how do we find things? And like, oh yeah, we can like consciously look for them, or they can just fall in our laps, and that's weird. And like, I really did have to kind of step by step move through these categories, and there were a lot of revelations along the way. Probably most fundamentally the question of like, well, what do you make of it all, Schultz, right? Like at some point you have to, as the author, deliver something to your reader. Like what do we do with the fact that we are going to lose everything we love, right? And yes, life is full of these spectacular discoveries, and what is that? Is that chance? Is that the universe just occasionally raining something amazing down on us, or is it fated? Is it ordered or ordained in some way? Like I do feel that I owe it to my readers to put my thumb on the scale and tell you, well, this is what I think, which of course requires figuring out what you think.
Did you ever see Swap Shop?
No. Lightning round? No.
Any guys ever see Swap Shop on Netflix? Oh, you're missing out on a great show. Terrific show. It takes place in Eastern Tennessee, but it's about people, like there's a radio station that announces when there are things to be given away or for sale, like in people's garages. And then people just go scrambling around, like tearing off in their cars to get to the garage first. But what I love about it, to me, is I feel like it captures the spirit of your book, is that there's like wonder out there, stuff that we're all losing that other people are going to find, stuff that we've lost that we're going to find, stuff we've lost we're never going to find again. And that's what, kind of the allure, like the over the hill kind of excitement's all about. So yeah.
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely. I mean, this is like, I love, so, pre-pandemic, Casey and I would, every chance we got, we'd be driving somewhere and there'd be like a sign that was like, junk shop. It's like, meow. You know, I love these kinds of organized ways that people have managed to create to make fortuitous finding possible. And like, why do we love to do that, right? Why do we love to go to yard sales or secondhand shops? Because you think you might find some treasure, right? Or something that wasn't treasure to someone else, but is to you. And it's incredibly fun.
Yeah. So definitely get Casey's book. Casey's book.
Oh,
Kathryn's
definitely
book.
get Casey's book.
Casey and Kathryn's book. Also check out Swap Shop. You'll get the same kind of thrill in a 30-minute serving. So before we get to questions, should we do our heads or tails raffle giveaway?
Yeah, by all means.
So we promised you guys, I don't know if you are aware of this promise, but I had a really cool Running with Sherman running t-shirt to give away. And Kathryn is going to give away a signed copy of Lost and Found. And the way we're going to do it is by a heads or tails showdown. Has anybody ever done this before? Oh, right on. You guys have all kinds of new experiences. So here's what we do. If you guys would all just get to your feet, anybody, you guys up there can jump on in too. Just get to your feet. And what I'm going to ask you to do is we're going to focus on two parts of your body, your head and your butt. So you just randomly choose. I'll say 1, 2, 3 now. When I say now, you just put your hand on your head or on your ass and keep it there. Then we're going to flip this coin. And if you have guessed correctly, you're still in. And if you have guessed incorrectly, you are out. And for the instance of, for the guarantee of fairness, I will flip, Kathryn will call. I'll say 1, 2, 3 now. You guys do your thing. Ready? 1, 2, 3 now. Right?
Which is which?
It's a heads or a tail.
No, but I mean, is heads.
Heads is a head.
Oh.
Tail is a tail.
I'm a reasonably informed author. Okay, yeah, right. Gotcha. That would be tail.
Tails.
Yeah. Now I figured it out. Oh, not which half of the coin. Not that bad.
1, 2, 3 now.
Heads.
Freak answer. You guys aren't playing, or you guys are already out?
Whoa, we eliminated the entire upper tier.
So let's put your hand- how many people are left here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Right now, okay. 7 left. We're gonna get down to 2 or something like that. Okay. 1, 2, 3 now.
That would be tails.
Who's still in? How many hands up? You too.
Whoa,
You guys are two
okay.
winners.
Oh.
How should we choose? We have one of the two prizes. Either one that match your additional preference or sure. This is the very last one I actually have my connection, aka my drawer. It's a Running with Sherman, you can tell it's kind of huge. So yeah, you guys want to flip? Okay. You want the shirt or you got it? Right.
It's at the front.
Okay.
Don't leave. Come find me. I still have to sign it.
Well, cool. That was fun, right? So why don't we turn it over to Alex to run some questions and comments and things like that.
If you have a question, just feel free to raise your hand. And if you don't, I have like 7 on my end. Okay.
Okay, I admit I have not read the book, but two questions. One, did you ever really answer the bear question? The bear hiking or backpacking?
Okay, ask me the second question too.
You talk about love at first sight, which I have felt, but that does not mean the other person feels love at first sight. So I wonder how you would explain that phenomenon.
Both very good questions.
Great question.
First of all, you're so kind. Don't anybody ever apologize for attending a book event where you haven't read the book. You're sustaining literary culture and bookstores. I love that you're interested. I love that you wanted to come. It's my job to convince you want to read it. And if you don't, no hard feelings. To your questions, well, I mean, the deep answer to that question, I hate to sound like a, fifth grader finishing a like book report in a really sloppy way, but like the deep answer to that question is like, why do people fight about weird things? And you do sort of have to read the book to like kind of get at that. But the shallow answer to the question is, I think on balance, you're more likely to see a bear. I don't actually think, well, I think you're probably more likely to see a bear when you're out just hiking for a day if you are in a place like Shenandoah National Forest, where there are where there are there's a lot of high traffic and a lot of slightly careless hikers leaving a bunch of food behind. So probably she was right about that. Love at first sight. So I spend quite a few pages in the book writing about the mystery of love at first sight. The tenor of that, to be honest, is pretty critical of the whole concept, partly because it does seem pretty mysterious, like why and how would this happen? And partly because I think the idea of it has been used to sustain a lot of really unrealistic notions about love. And I certainly don't think that that's the only way people fall in love or find each other. So to your point, right, of course, it's entirely possible to fall for someone instantly and deeply and have it not be reciprocated. It's also entirely possible for two people to fall in love deeply and instantly and have it not work out, right? So it's an incredibly messy and imperfect category. And yet, inarguably, it's one that some people do experience, myself included. So it felt worth trying. This is what I'm often doing as a writer, right? It felt worth looking at it closely and kind of taking it down to its component parts to the best of my ability. Even at the end of the day, there's parts of it that you just have to look at it and say, boy, that's really mysterious.
Question over here. Yes. Back.
I'm so excited to be here because I read a memoir and I'm on my 6th draft and I actually had a lit agent read it as part of my program. So I wanted to ask you, like, I'm trying to sit down and do my last draft. Like, how do you know it's done? Did you get to a point where you knew yours was done? Because I'm really scared to sit down again. And I just have to sit down and try to finish it. And I know that it looks like you really did turn this into a work of art, and that's what we're supposed to do, right? So.
Well, first of all, congratulations. That's
Thank you.
wonderful. And it's a lot of work, right? 6 drafts is a ton of work. And I admire you for it because I do think wanting to write is one thing and even writing is one thing, but really sitting down and doing the hard work of editing and revising and making things better and better until you cannot make them better anymore is really tough. And there's a romantic and an unromantic answer to your question, and they're both true. The romantic answer is actually you do work until you can't make it any better, and the truth is we all have limits as writers. My feeling about anything I write is there's this kind of platonic ideal of it out there, like there's the perfect version of it somewhere in the world or in your mind, and all you can ever do is approximate that, right? And the question is just like, how far short are you going to fall? And we all do have limits as writers, but you try to get as close as you can. That's the romantic and the optimal version. The pragmatic counterpoint to that is, first of all, at some point, like you just can't do anymore, especially when you've been staring at something for so long. And second of all, at some point, you have to be done. You have to be done because you need to be sane. You have to be done because you have kids or a family or another job that's keeping you really busy. You have to be done because you have a deadline. You have to be done because you have a publishing house that's like, excuse me, like we're late here. And to be honest, all those things are helpful and legitimate too, meaning at some point, it is fine to stop. And if you have the luxury of stopping and putting it in the drawer and ignoring it for a year, clear eyes are really helpful, and only time can kind of refresh your eyes. But if you don't, yeah. Well, good for you. And don't be scared. It's easy to get scared of our own work or even of our own job, but it's really exciting. And I think that's the best thing you can kind of bring back to it. Good luck.
Other questions? Yes.
This troublemaker.
Having written about your own relationship with your father, father-daughter relationship, how has having your own child little Lila changed your perspective or whatever on love and family? You know, how has that changed?
That's a great question. I'm going to embarrass the questioner. I'm just going to go ahead and claim him as my cousin. He's my partner's cousin, wonderfully joining us tonight. And he just met my little daughter right before we came here. Boy, it's so funny having a child. It changes everything, and also nothing, because you're still who you are. But it's quite astonishing, right? It's astonishing to see a new life come into being. And on the one hand, they're just like already them. I mean, everyone will tell you this, but it's shocking. You know, it's shocking how much a newborn basically already has a personality and a kind of little kernel of just who they are. And you're not going to change that. And all you can do it is cherish it and protect it. But right on the other hand, they need absolutely everything from you. I feel very fortunate. I think the number one thing I grew up with was truly unconditional love, meaning it's not that, I wasn't, raised, and kind of my behaviors weren't shaped and formed and corrected in various ways by my parents, but there was never a sense of like, we'll love you if, or we love you because. It was like, we love you because you're ours, right? You're our daughter, and we love you just for that. That to me is the kind of essence of parenthood. Like, I love my daughter because she's my daughter. There's nothing more than that, and there will never be anything less than that. The peanut gallery over here. Chris is like, happy birthday, Sophie. Speaking of being a parent, right? I mean, I actually love that you're doing that, Chris. Like, it's poor Chris. He's like, I've stolen away like the one evening when he should have been home with his daughter tonight, and believe me, he's going home to her. But that's actually exactly what it is, right? Your mind is on her, and it should be. And my mind is with you guys, but also a little bit on my daughter, and like, how was her bedtime? And it's not that it changed my idea of love in a certain way. I mean, everything I wrote in the book feels accurate to me, but sort of expanded in a certain way. And certainly, I mean, I don't think anyone's ever become a parent without like really revisiting their own parents and kind of having a new respect and a very new perspective on what that was all like. So, mostly what do I think? I wish my father could have met my daughter, but she's such a joy, and in a really wonderful way. I mean, I just said a couple times tonight, I wrote a book about happy families and about love. And I hope more than anything that when my daughter grows up, when she thinks about her life, she thinks about happy families and love.
Wow, that was great. That was great. I know, you're making my eyes water. Are there any more questions? This is a rare opportunity. Kathryn Schultz will not be sitting in front of you the rest of your lives.
Right behind you.
Microphone. Okay. Sorry. Another microphone. Not good with these. Okay. So you said that you knew you wanted to write something, and that the way it worked is that you had a proposal and you took it to your editor. Did you have a sort of log line when you had to describe what the book was? What was it that you went to the editor with? And is that what you ended up with?
Great question.
I mean, yeah, not a softball, ladies and gentlemen. I am incredibly bad at like the one-line version of almost anything I'm writing. It's awful. It's a horrible thing to have to do. And especially like the way my mind operates is in the direction of like expansion and tangent. So when the challenge is like distill and like give me the one-line version, I can't even do it after I've written the thing, like let alone beforehand. So it's a task I really dread. I was helped out a little bit in this case because the first part of this book, Lost, grew out of an essay I wrote for the New Yorker after my father died, called Losing Streak, that was about, it really did contain the kernel of the whole first part of the book, because it was about the experience of grieving my father, but that kind of elegy to my father was the anchor for an exploration of this weird category I was talking about that contains like our wallets and our cell phones and so forth too. So mercifully, when I was talking to editors, at least I could say like, well, you remember that essay, like, you know, the first part's going to be based on that essay, and the second part is kind of a mirror image where I'm going to anchor an exploration of the category of discovery, you know, everything from new planets to new ideas in the story of discovering my partner. So I had some crutches, to be honest, but to the second part of that question, yeah, I pretty much wrote the book that I said I was going to write. I guess the slight caveat to that is, I think in the sort of original proposal version of the book, you know, it was like, I recall assembling this list of like phenomenal finds in the world and in history, you know, like the terracotta soldiers and you know, the age of exploration and all these sort of grand sweeping world historical finds. And I think sum total those things get like maybe 60 words in the book. So that fell by the wayside. I think rightly, it didn't make sense for this book to like, it wasn't an encyclopedia of awesome finds, you know, it didn't make sense. But sometimes when you're writing a proposal, you need a little crutch that's just going to gesture towards the spirit of the book, which was towards expansiveness and the nature of this category. So it wasn't exactly a false bill of goods, but yeah, that part of it didn't really materialize. But otherwise, I think it was pretty close.
I think we have a question from the internet.
Hi up there. I'm up here. So this is from the internet. This is from an anonymous attendee. Can you ask Kathryn what her favorite fact is from the book? Was it something about meteorites or the ampersand or what? Question mark.
Hello, anonymous person from the internet.
Who seems to know a lot about you.
Yeah, who's read the book. It's a great question. I'm like cringing because I feel like this is the kind of question I'm really bad at answering because I don't tend to have like quivers of facts at my fingertips. I don't have that kind of mind. I wish I did. My father did. My partner Casey does. She would answer this question gracefully and quickly. I think here's my favorite fact that didn't make it into the book, if that will do. And it is about meteorites, in fact. A really fun thing about this book, you know, when you write a book, you wind up talking about the book a lot, as I am tonight. And in the case of a memoir, people are always asking me like, oh, like, you know, well, what did you read? Actually, with almost any book, people say, well, what did you read to write this book? And I think people are often expecting me to say like, you know, The Glass Castle and The Liars Club and Educated and all these memoirs, which I read them all. And actually those are all terrific. But actually like a lot of the most fun stuff I read for this book was like, you know, meteorites, a cosmic history, this kind of stuff. For those of you who haven't read it, there's a small but crucial cameo played by a meteorite in this book. Here's an astonishing fact that I ultimately left on the cutting room floor, just because it didn't belong there. But in the course of researching meteorites, you know, so most meteorites, like 99.4% of meteorites or something, originate in the asteroid belt. And they get kind of jogged out of their orbit in some way, shape, or form, and they start streaming toward Earth, and they hit our atmosphere, and they mostly burn up. But then whatever remains crashes onto the planet. So you guys have all probably like seen depictions of the asteroid belt in science fiction films, right? Like some ship like enters the asteroid belt, and it's like this immediate bombardment, right? You know. So here's the incredible fact. That is a wildly inaccurate depiction of the asteroid belt. The asteroid belt is so enormous that on average, any two objects within it are more than 500,000 miles apart. So that's my fact that didn't actually wind up in the book. So it's a real bonus for tonight's attendees.
David, were there more questions?
Alex, did you have a question?
I was going to save it for later, but
Oh.
we have time for maybe one last question.
We have no secrets here, Alex.
We've got one more over here. Then maybe I'll fit mine in.
Okay, I hate to be self-centered, but I'm going to ask you another question about, okay, so obviously you're well known because you're a writer for the New Yorker, you know, and that's wonderful. And I look forward to reading more of your New Yorker articles, but like I'm a former reporter, but I'm not known, you know, so my question is, do you think you have to have like a whole platform, like a platform to go to a literary agency and say, this is my platform and this is why you should publish me? Or do you think I should just go with sending out my proposal? And because I do have a really good subject, but my memoir, like it's about race and dysfunctional families, and it's not a love story, but it's timely. So do you think that you need to have a platform? I'm thinking I probably do, but
It's a great question, and a complicated one. So the short answer is no, meaning, look, it turns out a short answer is hard. I'm not going to keep us here for 20 minutes discussing this, but look, do publishers love it when you show up and you're like, I have 47 million Instagram followers and I'm on NBC every morning, and the whole world knows me? Obviously, right? Of course. And unfortunately, it is true that more and more of the bestseller list is taken up by celebrities. It's actually really hard to crack those lists if you aren't pre-existingly famous. And I don't mean like New Yorker staff writer, which I love my job so incredibly much. And like you guys have probably heard of the New Yorker, but I'll tell you, in the world at large, being a New Yorker staff writer does not a celebrity make, right? I mean, like actual celebrities. And so, yes, of course, publishers love it when you can say, here's what I'm going to bring to the table in terms of like readers who are going to be eager for this book. That said, they're not dumb. They know that that's a tiny minority of people, and that is not, they can't just publish those kinds of books. And to their credit, they definitely don't want to just publish those kinds of books. And they know that many people, most people, the vast majority of people are not going to bring that to the table. And they are also famished for good books and famished for interesting books. And they know that part of their job is to figure out how to get those books in front of readers, regardless of what the author is able to do. And you cannot lean on an author. They would love to, but you can't lean on an author for all of your book sales. So I do think, mercifully, there's a, think about, look, we're in a bookstore, right? And we're surrounded by all these gorgeous books, including a great many that came out 10 or 20 or 100 or 600 years ago. This is a tiny, infinitesimal fraction of the numbers of books published in this country every year, right? We publish a lot of books. There is room in the publishing world, thankfully, for books by all kinds of people about all kinds of subjects, and all of which is to say, absolutely, don't pretend to have what you don't, but celebrities can make books, but books every once in a while can make celebrities, which is a beautiful thing. And even more important, books can just make authors, who develop loyal readers and people who are interested in them. And I'll tell you, a lot of the authors who got famous, without being pre-existingly a celebrity, what do? You write a book, and then you write another book, and then you write another book. And each time, look, this is my second book. And for the last one, there would have been a third as many people in this room. And I wasn't a New Yorker staff writer, but there was still an Alex somewhere who was willing to have me. And there were still some people who were willing to come out and listen to someone they actually had never heard of, so I would definitely not let it be a deterrent.
We've got to wrap up, but can we give one more round of applause for Chris and Kathryn? All right, we're going to have a book signing over here. We've got copies of Lost and Found. Also, Kathryn's first book, Being Wrong, is also available for purchase. And we've also got Chris's books, Born to Run, Running with Sherman, all of them. So thanks again for coming out, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Have a
Thanks
good
so
night.
much.
And free
Thank you.
book winner, come up here so I can get you your book.